Okay, Assalamualaikum and very good evening. Okay, I think better we start early so that we can finish early. All right, so what we are going to cover, because we have finished discussing about structure of data. Yeah. Yesterday we have discussed on struct. Okay, struct keyword, whereby you use struct keyword to create your own data type. Okay. And then you use dot operator to basically access each individual members inside your structure. Yeah. So we have discussed this. And then we also discussed about enumeration. What do you mean by enumeration? Enumeration is data type. Enumeration is basically you try to assign numbers to elements. Okay. Maybe days. Okay. If you write enum Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, it means your Monday is assigned as 0, and then your Tuesday is assigned as 1, so on and so forth. Now, we only have another 2 topics to cover. Yeah. One is introduction to class. Another one is advanced file operation. Okay, advanced file operation, in which I think would be beneficial for you to complete assignment 2, I guess. Yeah. Okay, so but anyway, we are going to cover introduction to classes. I don't think we can finish introduction to classes today because it's quite a long slide, 83 slide. I'm going to cover just half of it, and then be covering the rest on Wednesday next week. Okay. All right. So let's get started. So introduction to classes. Classes is also another data type that programmer can create. Yeah. Quite similar to structure. It's also another data type that, I mean, a way for a programmer to create data type. Yeah. Now, before we discuss about classes, because classes is already under object-oriented programming, let's try to understand what you mean by procedural and also OP. Yeah. This is 2 paradigm, programming paradigm that you must learn. Okay, must learn procedural language, even though at the end you are going to use OOP. Yeah. Now, what is the meaning of procedural language or procedural paradigm? Procedural means procedure. It comes from the word procedure. Procedure means you write step-by-step instruction. Okay, 1, 2, after this, you do this, after this, you do this, after this, you do this. So it's a procedure. And sometimes after this, you do this, after this, you do this. That instruction, you replace it with function call, right? So that is still considered as procedure. Yeah. So the way you try to solve things is by procedure. Okay, step by step. Now, another type of programming is what we call as object-oriented programming, in which the way you write your program, you will start with object first. Okay, so rather than straight away write the procedure, you start with object first. What kind of object that you are going to create in order to solve your problem? Okay, so we don't straight away jump into the procedure, but we start with object. Now, to create an object, you need to have blueprint. This is where your class is. Okay, so this class, introduction to class, is basically how you can actually move into object-oriented programming, whereby you try to create object first, and then the whole programming is based on what oriented on object. So before you can create an object, you need to create the blueprint. Okay, so in this case, you need to learn how you create class, because class is basically a blueprint for an object. Yeah. Okay, so this is the essence of procedural and object-oriented. Let's have a look at more detail about this. Procedural programming focuses on the process or procedure that will occur in the program. Yeah, what are the actions one by one? Object-oriented is based on objects. Okay, when we say objects, when we say object, what do you mean? What is an example of an object? Object, and an example of object is car. Now, for car, you have certain data of car. That's why object-oriented is based on data. Car, you can have color. Maybe you can have model. You can have what else? Car, color, model, and then how many tires, for example, how many doors, so on and so forth. So data and the functions. Now, object also has function other than color, how many doors, so on and so forth, how many cc, and so on. But object also has, in addition to that, object also has function. For car, it can drive, can brake, you can start, you can reverse, you can turn right, turn left. Okay, so that are the function related to car object. Okay, so always remember, whenever we are talking about object, and object, it consists of data. Sometimes we call it as values. Like for example, yesterday, there are two things inside abstract data type, right? Number one is values, number two is operation. Same thing about here, is just different term. Object-oriented programming is considered as data type also, whereby you have data is the values, and operation is basically the function. Okay, that function will operate on the values lah. Okay, so objects are instance of ADT. Again, we refer to back to abstract data type, in which we are talking about data and function, or maybe sometimes we call it as values and operation. Yeah. Okay. So things to highlight over here, as I mentioned, class and object is quite different in the sense that class is blueprint of an object. Object is as instance of class. Okay. Later on, things will be more clearer for all of you. Okay. Now, why are we moving towards OOP? Why are we moving towards object-oriented programming? Because you have already learned programming fundamental, it's already procedural programming. What's wrong? Maybe as a beginner, you might not see the limitation. Okay. But after you have done maybe assignment 1 and assignment 2, maybe you start to identify the limitation. Okay. Let's have a look at what is the limitation of procedural programming that makes programmer move towards OOP. Okay. Now, the problem here is that if let's say you use procedural programming, if the data structure change, many function must also change. Okay. What do you mean by that? Suppose, okay, here, data structure change. Okay. When you talk about data structure, maybe we are talking about this structure. Let's say you have already student. Okay. Name and then student ID. Okay. And then, so I can just declare, okay, according to what you have learned yesterday, I can just declare student A, and then name ABC, and then maybe I will call display function. Yeah, I call display function. All right, and then I pass A. I pass my my variable lah. Okay, so and then let's say I'm going to create display function. Okay, so for example, void this void display. Okay, and then suppose I put here student, I don't A maybe. Okay, and then I'm going to display, right? A name and L. So let me just put the prototype over here. Okay, now everything is okay. This is procedural language. I use display over here, and then I run. So let's see what's wrong here. Display error variable of field display declared void. Yeah, already. Student was not declared. Student A. Why it is not declared? Display was not declared in the scope. Okay, this one. I need to put this after. Right? Because student A, we need to, yeah, this student will only be recognized whenever this comes before. Yeah, okay. So let me just run. Okay, now this is procedural language. Okay. So even though this is just one procedure, okay, which is fine. Now, what happened is the limitation of procedural language. If let's say my data structure change, what do you mean by data structure change here? Okay, data structure change, many functions must also change. Now, if let's say I change this, oh, maybe instead of just name, I need to add one more. I need to add address. Now, what will happen? Okay, since I have already put here, then I need to add here. So a dot address. Okay, I need to change here, maybe KL, and then display A, and then I need to also change it here, add one more. So a lot of things that need to be changed. Okay, so this is something that the limitation. So you just imagine if let's say you have many functions, so you need to change every function. Okay, every function, because everything is interrelated. None of the function is hidden from you, so you need to actually check one and every function. Okay, so this is what we meant by once the data structure change, many functions will also be changed. If you delete one, then yeah, a lot of things that need to be changed. I think you have experienced this in assignment 1, perhaps. Okay. Now, this is one limitation of procedural programming. As you introduce more lines in your code, your program will be complex function hierarchies. Remember, you need to do structure, right? Structure chart. Now, structure chart is basically the hierarchies of your function. This function actually calling this function, this calling this function, and sometimes your function calling a function from different branches. Okay, so it become complex, and sometimes it will be difficult to understand. But this one is necessary for you as once you learn programming, which is fine. Difficult to understand and difficult to maintain. Some of you try to change assignment 2 with different ways, see, because things get more complex and difficult to maintain. Difficult to modify, difficult to extend. Yeah, you want to extend to assignment 2, for example. Okay, so this is where object-oriented programming comes to solve some of the problems. So whenever you introduce object-oriented programming, there's a concept of encapsulation. Later on, there are four concepts: encapsulation, inheritance, in which it will be easier for you to basically extend your program. Okay, later on, because you cannot see this because you haven't learned object-oriented programming yet. Okay, so once this concept is being what you call introduced to you later, then only you can appreciate it. Okay, so just maybe at this point of time, you might start to identify certain limitation of procedural programming. Okay. Let's have a look at the terminology of object-oriented programming. Okay, number 1 is class. So this is something that you need to know what you mean by class and what you mean by object. There's a difference between class and object. Class is like struct. Okay, you can still remember, go back to our yesterday's class. Struct is a way for you to create the definition of your data structure, the structure of your data, or the new data type that you want going to create. Okay, so you put struct and then whatever variables inside. Class is similar to that also. Okay, whereby I'm not sure whether there's example here or not. Okay, like this. Let's say you want to create a class of rectangle, you just write class. Okay, previously this part we use struct. Okay, if you can remember. Okay, and then you have open and close bracket. This is quite similar to creating your own data variable. Okay, so ended with semicolon. The only thing here is that for struct, whatever that is inside here is values or your member variable. This is what we call as member variable. Variables only. But for class, is a template. This is considered as template. You have values. Okay, we call it as member variable, and you also have functions. This is the operation. Okay, sometimes we call it as methods. All right, member function. Sometimes we call it member function. Sometimes we call it operation. Sometimes we call it as methods. Okay, depending on which textbook that you are referring to. This one, sometimes we call it as values. Sometimes we call it as data variable. Sometimes we call it as member variable. Yeah, so we are referring to the same thing. Okay, so this so what class is quite similar to struct, whereby the purpose of you having this is to create your own data type or maybe your own class. Okay, so that you can use that in your main function. Okay, so this is the first step of you creating an object, because object is always based on two things. Number 1 is the data. Number 2 is the function. Okay, like for example, just now car, the data will be maybe color. So you have string color, string tire, string whatever, and then you are going to have function drive, reverse, turn, so on and so forth. Okay, so this is the starting of you to create a data type which represent objects. Okay, objects, but you need to declare it using class. Okay, class keyword. Okay, so let's go back here. It's a class is basically like a start. It allows you bundle many variables inside. Okay, for example, just now, okay, you are going to have many variables. For student, you have name, address, student ID, so on and so forth. Okay. But variables and function in class can have different properties than in struct. Okay. In struct, you have variables. The one that you have seen yesterday, but we did not see any operation. But class, normally you have variables and function. Yeah, we call it as member function. Class can have different properties. Okay, what do you mean by properties over here? This one. Properties. Some are private. You can set your data type to private. Sometimes you can set its properties to public. You can set its properties to protected. Same thing like function. Okay. This is not something that is available in struct. Struct, you don't have private, public, so on and so forth. Everything is public. Okay, that is struct. Class, you can set the properties lah. So this is what we meant by here can have different properties, either public, private, or protected. Okay. Now, what about object? Object is instance of a class, meaning whenever you have created class, like for example here, this is struct. Okay. I can create this as class also. Okay, class. Then my object is this one. The moment you create an instance of student, then this instance is called as object of class student. Okay. So A is object of class student. Okay. So maybe I can run this. Let me make this as public. 18 equals to address, string address also. Okay. Okay, it's very similar to struct. The only difference is that you just change this to class, and then you need to specify the you need to put specification with the public, private, or protected. Yeah. Later on, we discuss what is the difference between public, private, and also protected. But exactly the same implementation. That's why you learn struct first. Okay. Once you understand how you operate with struct, okay, exactly the same. You use the dot operator, same thing. Then you slowly move towards OOP. Okay. The only different OOP with struct is that you have this number one, and then normally you have also what you call methods. Okay. So in this case, I can just bring this. Maybe I want to have a display here as the method also possible. Yeah. Okay. Later on we learn on how you can create member functions. Okay. Let's go back to our slide over here. Okay. So instance of a class. Okay. That means an example of a class. The actual object of a class, or the actual instance of a class, because class is just template. In the same way that a variable can be instance of stuff. Okay. So we have discussed this. All right. So in terms of diagram, this is your class. Okay. Whereby, okay, for example, let's say you want to create a class house. Okay. So you write class house, and then inside there you maybe have the house plan, living room, bedroom. Okay, those are the variables, or maybe another object, for example. So that constitute a house. Okay. Then in the main function, when you start using your house, let's say house A, house B, house C. So this is we call it as creating an instance of class house. Okay. So it becomes an object. The moment you declare your class, then it becomes an object. Okay. That's all. All right. Now, again, terminology. Attributes is member of class. Okay. So that means this can be member variable. It can be called as attributes. It can be called as values, member values, so on and so forth. Okay. Attributes, member of class. Methods or behaviors are basically member function of a class. Okay. So again, this one can be considered as methods, can be considered as member function, can be considered as what? Methods. So methods, member function, and behaviors. Sometimes we call it operation, behaviors. Okay, a lot of terms referring to class only. Okay. Now that is about class. Now more on objects. More information about objects. Data hiding. Remember the concept of abstract data type. Okay. So struct is an example of abstract data type, because why we call it abstract? Because we want to hide many things inside the structure. Similarly, in class, we would like to hide maybe certain data. We would like to hide certain operation, for example, which is why you have this private. That's why in class you have private. Those function or methods that we want to let everyone to use, we make it public. Some functions or methods that we do not want to let other people to know or to use, we make it as private. Okay, so that's why this concept is considered as abstract data type, because the moment we create a data type whereby we do not want people to know everything inside, so it becomes abstract. Yeah. So when we write a class whereby we make certain the data is hidden, private, meaning you cannot access this data, that means it becomes try to make things hidden. Yeah. Okay. So this is one of the practice in when you create class. Normally, the data will be made as private. Okay. We do not want other people to simply access the members of the object. All right. Next, public interface. Interface. Some of the thing we make it as public. Okay. Just change from private to public. Members of an object that are available outside of the object. So that means you can access it from the main function. Yeah. So this will allow object to provide access to some data and maybe some function. Okay. It depends on the programmer. You are the one who create your data, your data type. You decide some data. Okay, this one can be accessed. This one cannot. Okay, and you are not going to share its internal detail and design. Okay, like for example, um, I don't know, C++ string. If you search, this is an example of class, string class. Okay, so here some of the member types. I guess this may be public. Okay, the one that is being shown over here is a public. Then these are the member function, public member function that you can use. Okay, for this one, string operation. Yeah, okay. So these are some of the public. Of course, maybe there'll be some private functions that will not be exposed to others for you to know. Yeah. Okay, so it will provide some protection from data corruption when we restrict access to the data. Okay, right. Let's move on to how you can, okay, the hands-on part, how can you create class. So to create class, you just write class and then the class name and then exactly the structure like struct. Okay, then this will be your attributes and also your methods. Okay, here we have two attributes, is private and your methods are all public. Okay, now how to use the method is quite similar to how you can access the member variable using the dot operator. Yeah. Okay, now access specifier. Okay, different between class and also what you call struct. In class, you can use access specifier whereby you can specify certain members as public, certain members are private. Actually, there's another one which is protected. Okay, maybe this is just beginning for beginners. Public means you can access the function from outside the class. Okay. Private means the data can only be accessed by function which is also members of the class. Okay, so we're going to have a look at the example for these two specifiers, access specifiers. Okay, this is an example. This is private members because we make it private. So the moment you put private over here, whatever comes after this is considered as private. Okay, and until it reaches another access specifier. Okay, so that means the moment you put here public, whatever comes after this is all public until to reach another access specifier. Okay, or maybe after, maybe I want to put double get area private, so I can just put private again here. Okay, so that means the first four function are public. Okay, so that's how you specify your private public. Okay, so access specifier you can be listed in any order. Maybe you want to put public first and then private below. That's fine. Maybe private and then public and then private again. So it depends on where you put your private and public. Whatever comes after the access specifier would follow the specification that you have set earlier. Okay, can appear multiple times as I mentioned. Maybe private here, public, and then later suddenly I put private back. Okay, not specify the value is private. Okay, let's say you miss. You don't specify this. You don't specify this. So the question in that test, for example, okay, is this private or public? There's no specification. If there's no specification, all of these are considered as private. Okay, private. Instruct. Okay, remember instruct. If you don't specify, let's say you want to specify, I'm not sure. I think we can still specify juga lah. I mean, even though, let's check whether it's also possible here to specify public. Yeah, still can. See, that means there's no error here. If let's say I put here, but instruct, if you don't specify, this one is considered as public. So that's why you can access the name and so on. Okay, I'm not sure. I think I can put here private as well. The moment I put here private, then this one will become wrong because I'm trying to access a private members. So that means the whatever that is mentioned here, whereby the difference between struct and also class is that you don't put access specifier is not that accurate in my opinion, because I can still put here private, but we don't normally put access specifier for struct. Okay, so in a way it is also true because we don't normally put, but if we put, we are not going to get any compiler error. So that's the meaning. Yeah. Okay. Let's go back here. All right. So okay, just remember, if you don't put anything here, everything will be considered as private. Then you are not going to be accessed to easily access this from the main easily from other, I mean from other function other than the one that is specified here. Okay. But for struct, if you don't put any access specifier, it's considered as public. Yeah. Okay. Member function. Okay, you have 5 member function over here, or public members we call it, or sometimes we call it as method or behavior or operation. If you notice here, some of the function are made constant. Why? Okay. Why? Because let's have a look at the nature of the function over here. I mean, there's nothing wrong if you don't put constant here, right? This is just function prototype. Double get width. That means you what does it mean by double get width? Double get width means it's a function or a method that will simply return the values of this width. Get length will basically return the value of length. Return, okay? Just return, because it doesn't do any other things. It's just return the value, okay? Get length will just return the value of length of that rectangle. Get area is just to return width multiplied by length. Okay? It doesn't change any value for this one. Okay, so since it doesn't change any value, that means we make this as constant. So that the value is not supposed to change. Sorry, the function is not supposed to change the value of this private. Okay. Set width and set length, we don't put any constant over here because set width is going to change value for width to a new value. Set length is going to set values for length. So that means this function is going to change the value of width and length. Hence, we cannot make it as constant because yeah, some value will be changed. So this is what is going to be mentioned here. Why using constant with member function? Some member function only. Yeah. We declare that the function will not change any data whenever we call this function. Okay, meaning change any data. This data refers to this width and length, because this is just to access. Okay, to access only. So yeah, that's why we put as constant. Okay, now you have known how to define class. Okay, this is how to define class. You put data variable, and then you have public members. But this one you have not yet defined, right? This is just prototype. Because class is just blueprint to say, okay, you have two attributes, you have 5 function or 5 methods, that's all. But you still need to write the implementation of this. Okay, the function definition, I would say. So where to put the member function definition? Normally you are going to put it after the main function. Okay, after the main function. So the difference here is that, let's say set width. Okay, set width. You have void set width double. So you copy this, put it after main function as what you normally do with function declaration, definition, so on. You put function prototype first, then main function, and then function definition, right? Okay, similar like this. This one also you put the definition to be put after main function. You copy this, okay, void set width and everything. Okay, let's say int set width and everything. This is the everything lah. Okay. But since set width is inside class, okay, because it is not normal function, because normal function you just copy the function prototype and then again same same function header and then write the definition. Since this belong to a class, so you must add this. Okay, you must add this. So meaning set width is actually a function that belong to rectangle class. This is the only part that you need to add. Okay, together with what we call as resolution operator. So this is maybe something new operator that you have learned today, right? So this will indicate the scope. Call it a scope resolution operator. So whenever you read function, okay, set width, and then suddenly you have this scope resolution operator. You know that this is not just normal function. This is actually function that belong to rectangle class. Okay, rectangle class. But this is how you write it. Okay, as you can see over here, set width will basically take W. Okay, you're going to pass value from your main function, and then that value will be assigned to width. Okay, so in this case, width is the maybe this one lah. Okay, of course this is belong to rectangle lah. Okay, so I guess for rectangle, yeah, rectangle. Okay, belong to width from rectangle. So yeah, right. Okay, so I'm going to just cover until accessor and mutator, and then we call it a day. Okay, accessors and mutator. Now, your function or your member function, okay, some of the member function are called as accessor. Okay, some are called as mutator. Accessor means access. Okay, the function or the methods only, the job of that method is only to access only. Okay, so get width is to access the width only. It does not try to modify the width. So this one is considered as accessor. Get length is just to access the value of length and then let other function know about it. Okay, so this is also considered as accessor. This one is also get area, just to access area. Area is basically width multiplied by length, so just to access only. So there's no modification of value being done by that function. So these three are called as accessor. These two is what we call as mutator. Mutator because the function try to mutate. Okay, mutate means try to modify the value of width. Set width, that means you are trying to modify the value of width. Set length, definitely you are doing some modification. So this is basically mutator. All right, so that's the difference between mutator and accessor. Okay, so let's go back to here so that you can understand more. Mutator means function or member function. Okay, we are function inside a class is called member function that will store a value. When you store a value, that means you are changing the value. You are trying to mutate it. Okay, modify the value in a private member variable. Actually, not necessarily private. You can have also public member variable. So as long as the function actually try to store value or try to modify or changes its value, okay. So those member function is called mutator. Okay, that's why I highlighted over here the blue part. Now another one which is just access. Okay, no value being mutated. Okay, we call it as accessor. It's just retrieve value. Okay, just to access value from private member variables or maybe from public variable. But normally from private member lah. So accessors do not change an object data. Okay, it just try to access only. So and then normally that accessor, since it does not change any value, so it will be marked as constant. So as you can see over here, all these are accessor. Okay, and these are also accessor. These three. Okay, and it is made as constant. Okay. All right. Any question? This one we are going to continue later lah. Yeah. All right. If no question, we are going to stop here. All right. Thank you for responding. Let me just show the QR code for those who came late. Okay, Zaid. Yeah. Okay, if you can try to scan this. Okay. I guess because this QR code is always refreshing every 15 seconds. So if you don't do it, if your network is having problem, you might capture it maybe after 10 seconds in which you are not able to send during the window. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. I shall see you next week. Have a nice weekend.
Thank you, sir.